Hello, I'm Loosemore and welcome to a review of New York Zoo, a new polyomino game from Uwe Rosenberg. It came out at the end of last year and a game I've been playing a lot. Relatively recently I moved in with some of my family in my bubble for mental health reasons among other stuff, and just got to play this a good amount. It went down really well, so let's do a review of it. I'm not going to explain the rules necessarily, I'll allude to them as we go along. I've done a separate video for that. This is just me going through my 6 categories that I talk about and telling you what I think. So let's start, as we do, with the mechanisms. As I say, this is a polyomino game, by which we mean Tetris pieces of all different shapes, different sizes, and you are filling in a grid. And as you go along, actually, because you're building a zoo, New York Zoo, you fill those with animals, and there's a breeding mechanism which is really cool. Whenever you pass a certain line on the track, on your basically action selection track, that everybody's working from the same one, there are moments where different types of animals can breed. There's only 4 animals in the game, and if you've got 2 of that animal in the pen, you get an extra one, which is just lovely. And so there's just a lovely kind of inviting toy aspect in there as well, which we'll get to with audience and production, but just seeing your board grow is just a really nice touch, and I think that as a mechanical choice, that's a good one. I'm generally not huge on polyomino games. They're fine, they're okay. I really like Patchwork, same designer, super simple, really clean, just a 2-player only game. And so I was like, okay, this one adds a little bit more. We'll see how it works. And it's really good. It's super simple. The nature of polyomino games, usually you have to try and match them next to each other, but this you can kind of put things wherever you want, but that might harm you in the end because you need then specific shapes and as you're going around all this stuff. And the other key difference here with this one from other ones that I've played is this is a race game, essentially. It's just the first person to fill in their plot wins. That's it. There's no points. It's not a Euro. It's not that kind of thing. There's the resource of animals and breeding, which we'll come to, but it's just a straight race. Whoever fills their thing first, done. And that works really well. I was a bit worried that this might be a little bit complex. There's a few extra rules and things like Patchwork for non-gamery people. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, just people that aren't, wouldn't classify themselves as hobby gamers necessarily. But now we'll move on to theme and how that interlocks with everything. The theme is so lovely, so welcoming, that it just pulled that through. I know I've said that about other games and other people have said it to me and I've disagreed with them, that various games, the theme really pulls it through. This one does. It doesn't matter that this was slightly heavier than Patchwork, which my mum had played before, taught it to her, and I thought, is she gonna find this a bit overwhelming? Is there a bit too many fiddly rules? But because it was playing with animals, because it was building a zoo, because it was seeing these attractions build up, it just really worked. And the mechanisms are largely thematically tied. Yes, why are you building your pens that weird Tetris-y shape? Not thematically tied. But the fact that when you get enough or too many, let's say, animals in your pen, you go, actually, we can make some money, so let's ship them off to another zoo. Let's let somebody else have fun. We'll keep one of the animals. We still want something going on in the attraction. But now we've made some money, we can get a ride or a food vendor or whatever it is. Then by shipping off animals, which is really just a mechanism to fill up your board because you get a new piece that will fill in space. So it's a mechanical thing, but thematically that makes sense. You've made some extra money, so you're going to get this extra thing, and so yeah, we'll reinvest that into the zoo. And as we keep building and doing all this stuff, and so it just ties in really well. It's an abstract game. It's shapes and numbers and whatnot, but they've done a really good job at linking the theme to it. Yes, why are there only these 4 animals in the zoo? I don't know. But there's enough thematic ties that the mechanisms are made that much more palatable. They're simple enough mechanisms for experienced hobby gamers, I would say. But for newer people or just casual people, it might have felt a little overwhelming, but the theme just does a really good job at pulling that through. And then next category, I wanted to talk about it next anyway, and it just happens to be next on the list, is art. These people, look at this. I mean, that snow fox is grumpy as anything, but there's just a really weird, charming aesthetic to the whole thing. It just kind of works, and it's a bizarre style. I think does that look like a kangaroo? None I've ever seen, but it just works. And so the art style is great. It's lovely. 5 animals. Oh, I missed one. There he is. He's on the side. There's a little meerkat. It's just lovely. Again, making it welcoming, making it inviting to people that may not want to sit down and do a little puzzly polyomino game. Suddenly, oh, actually, this looks lovely. Let's do this. Graphic design. Probably there's a little bit more to say on this one. This falls into the trap of a few other games where the graphic design is really good once you know what everything means. What I mean by that is if you were to look at one of the player boards, and if you watch my referrals video, you'll get to see it. Across the top, there are helpful reminders in symbol form, which is good, makes it language independent, all the good choices, but they're not necessarily intuitive. It doesn't quite make sense until you know the rules and go, oh, actually, because it's that fiddly thing, yes, I see, that does mean this, and it reminds, then once one person at the table has internalized the rules, then yes, they are a good reminder and they're really clear. But initially, just sitting it down, they're not that intuitive necessarily. I didn't find, and we didn't find. You might do, and great. So it's good graphic design. It is. So when you get your player board at the top, as if it's like the little stone monuments on your gate kind of thing, it shows you your starting animals, and that's a really nice touch. And all the symbols are really clear, and it does mean what it means, and you go, oh, okay, that does make complete sense. But just to look at it, because it's attempting to be language independent, you need to have really studied the rules. We were getting a couple of things wrong, and the symbology supported what we were getting wrong. It wasn't specific enough in that sense to go, actually, no, how we were playing it is slightly wrong. I had to go back to the rules to go, oh, we're interpreting that symbology incorrectly. Now that we know it, yes, of course it means that. So it's a slight... I'm not sure whether that's a good or a bad thing. It kind of balances itself out on that one. But the presentation of the graphic design is good. The only other ding that I would give is that track where you're moving the elephant round. It's unclear to me whether you're supposed to move the elephant around above the spaces or on the spaces, by which I mean where the tiles are, or where the animals are pictured. What, do you go above, do you go below? And the reason I raise that as an issue is because then those breeding lines, again, if you don't know the game, if you're new to it, if you're using it above, that's where those pictures of animals are. Yes, a different color background, yes, different borders, again, graphic design, they've tried to differentiate it as best they can, but that could just look like another space, whereas breeding lines, you cross over them. But then if you go on the spaces below where the tiles actually are, then where you pick up animals isn't a clear space. And so it's a really functional board. It works really well. In fact, well, let me just grab it and show you. Long thing. But let's just use this as the example here. If you put them on the animals and on the spaces where the tiles are, that's great. But then the rulebook shows you putting it along here. And so yes, it's differentiated because this is higher, this is lower, and it's all this stuff. But I'm nitpicking. Newer players just struggled with what is a space, what isn't, that kind of thing, just a little bit. So really good. They've done the best they can with that, with the choices that they've made, but it wasn't always immediately intuitive and clear. But the production is lovely. Those animal pieces are just super cute. Again, as I was mentioning earlier, just that toy factor to the game just makes it that much more inviting, that much more engaging. So lovely. If I were to give it any dings at all, the player boards are just real thin. And that's not a bad thing for function, but sometimes, you know, the corners were more likely to get nicked and bent and things, and it will just rough up that bit quicker. It's a good quality material, just because they're that thin, they're more likely to nick and bend and whiten and all that stuff. And maybe, here's a question I can't answer. Should the penguin pieces have a white belly on both sides? Now, I know physiologically they only have one belly. I'm aware of that. I've seen Happy Feet too, I know that. But all the other animals, the cross sections are this way, and so they're the same on both sides and they don't have any printing on them. But for some reason the penguins are this way, looking off to the side, but this way, and so they have a white belly. But then on the back they don't, and so with looking at them in the tray, it almost looks like printing errors, or like they're not supposed to be there. So I get both sides of the argument. If they had no white belly, they're less obviously penguins. If they had a belly on both sides, people go, they don't have a belly on both sides, what's that about? But on one side you go, oh, it looks weird with the printing. So I get it, but yeah, I can't answer that one. But audience, I've alluded to this so much, it's so welcoming. Any hurdle you might think you have is just overcome by the presentation, and the rule book is laid out really well. This is just a lovely, welcoming game for anybody of any ability. I don't remember what it says in terms of age. Is it 10? 10 plus. So I'd be interested to try this with one of my nieces who's pushing that age. She's not quite there yet, but how would she fare with this kind of thing? Because it's not that difficult, but there are those fiddly rules, and so how much does the theme overcome them? I can't quite answer yet. It scales super easily. The solo works. It's probably the least engaging version of the game, but it works with those number tiles to propel you around and figure that out. I've never beaten it because you get around that track so quickly. But it just works because it's a race game. You're not worried about endgame bonuses and all this stuff. It's just, oh, I filled it in. It's usually pretty tight. It works really well. The game length is great. It's so inviting, so welcoming. So it's a really good game. So wrap it up. New York Zoo, excellent, very welcoming, lovely theme that propels you through any mechanism hurdles that you might have, works well at any number, is relatively inexpensive from a seasoned designer. This is just a great product. I know Capstone games make good productions, and they have again. New York Zoo, really recommend it. Thank you very much. Hope that was useful for you if this is something you're interested in. Do consider subscribing if you don't already. Hit the bell icon so you stay updated when I put out new stuff. You get to see all the other reviews and whatnot that I do. In between then, just find me on social media, search Win Some Loosemore. You'll find me no problem. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Dieter for Win Some Loosemore. Goodbye.